jack of all trades versus the master of one. So me and Sal got onto this subject off the back of talking about Rogan, because Rogan is someone who is, a jack of all trades and a master of none, but has become massively successful. So the conversation we were having was kind of about whether the path to go down is to acquire a little bit of everything and how much success that leads to, or whether to stick to one thing and become successful at that. Because I would say that the more sure path is to stick at one thing and become a master of it. But in something like a creative field, if you are a master of, not a master, if you know a little bit of everything, you can, and you're lucky, or not lucky, but if luck's not a very good way to think about it. But if you know a lot of, sometimes you can reach massive heights of massive success if you can know a lot of different things and bring them forth as something to offer. Steve Jobs is someone who comes to mind, because they reckon Steve Jobs used to spend a lot of time at university and all the other classrooms that he wasn't meant to be in. And obviously, eventually, he managed to bring that all together and give it to the world in a form that was innovative. Because what was the quote, James, that I asked you to put in the intro here? Innovation is...
Pull it up, Jamie. One moment, please.
It's brief.
Innovation comes from the ability to correlate information between different realms of knowledge.
But it's less. It's not a sure path to success, is it? I expect for every Steve Jobs, there's a million people who know a little about a lot, who don't get anywhere. Sal used a good term about staying horizontal. A lot of clever people know a little about a lot, but stay horizontal, not vertical. Upwards.
Mate, exactly. Your point about creativity. Sorry, Sal, because it's exactly the same. I'm not going to talk about this book loads, but it's exactly the same as the over message from this book here. Matthew Syed's a great author, Black Box Thinking, among other books. But that's exactly what he says. Bounce as well. That's exactly what he says.
We've got to do 20 minutes on bounce, man.
So when you were thinking about creativity, a lot of I think we can talk about cognitive jack of all trades and physical jack of all trades. There's sort of two things, but definitely cognitively, you need lessons from lots of different fields. And he says a lot of problems would have been solved if people had looked outside their little cubicle, and taken in. All of the lessons are out there. You just have to be wise in harvesting them. A lot of problems would have been solved or avoided. One example, 9/11. In the US intelligence, everything was compartmentalized and nobody was sharing their knowledge. And it wasn't stopped. Jack of all trades in creativity. That's what he says. What do you think, Sal? Because you are a creative.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I am creative, but I like this idea of distinguishing the cognitive versatility versus the physical one. I think there's, chances and risks in both approaches, which means approaches between going all horizontal, which means, having different interests at the same time and trying to cover as many things at the same time because you're a very curious person, and going deep and vertical into one direction, but therefore, focusing less on stuff that's on the periphery and going more deeply into and being less shallow, let's say, about each topic. From personal experience, I can say that I'm naturally curious, but I also easily get sidetracked then from one topic. So the risk is, of course, that if you are constantly on the search for new stimuli and for new input and for new topics, you start reading about something or you start digging into one topic, but then 5 seconds later, just like, oh, this is interesting, and you go there. And then 10 seconds later, you're like, oh, a butterfly, and you go there.
Yeah, you're like a dog chasing cars, aren't you?
Exactly. And so you get nothing done. So I think, in fact, a good approach is, I believe, to pick certain fields and create a deep foundation there, and those will stick with you for your entire life, and then kind of circle around them and move away from them. And then every now and then when you find something also interesting on the periphery, you then invest more time there and go more in depth in those fields. And slow but sure, as you build up kind of your house of knowledge, let's say, prick by prick, you create a stronger foundation that eventually in the future will connect two different topics, and it makes sense. And the more connections you create in this way, the more you can allow yourself to completely go into a different direction horizontally again, because you will have the knowledge and the experience in life to find connections everywhere, and then it becomes easier to go deep with all these kind of side topics. I'm not sure if that completely makes sense, but I think that's a good approach. But it's very dangerous not to specialize, I think, in at least one thing, because then you just risk of being constantly distracted, constantly on the search, constantly looking for something new without ever getting anything done.
Sal, can I ask you then, because you're a person who are obviously a good friend of mine who I appreciate, and one of the things I like about you is that you do many different things every week. So which one for you is the thing that you're most keen on building vertically?
Well, keen on, I think it's more a natural, it's a thing that comes most natural to me, which is content creation or digital content creation. And so that sounds very vague, of course, but it has some very concrete implications, like video editing. So a basic knowledge of how video works and how the editing process works, and have a foundation of knowledge about graphic design and all these things that come together. Of course, the IT background, knowing about technology, how to apply new software, how programming works, like all these things are a foundation that help me get these things done. So everything kind of circles around in that example that you just mentioned, around that digital topic, but there's a foundation behind it. So I in my case, I studied it. You don't have to go to university to build a foundation, but in my case, that's how it turned out. But just generally, you have to build a foundation in something and build up on that. Yeah. So not sure if that answers your question.
That's the problem. Just to go on to the little university tangent for a second. Two things there. That's the problem with the British university system, that you have to specialize early, right? In the US system, I believe you pick classes and you have more of an interdisciplinary approach. So I might take a psychology class and an English writing class and this, that, and the other. Whereas in the UK, you pick one subject and you're there for 3 or 4 years. And
when do you pick in the UK? At what age?
Well, you pick 4 A-levels when you're 16, so you specialize in 4, and then you specialize down to 1. Some degrees are sort of dual, 1 or 2 topics for your university at 18.
Okay.
But like you said, everything is interdisciplinary. We live in a world which is connected, right?
Everything is everything. That's Lauryn Hill, baby.
everything is everything. Yeah. But yeah, it's completely counterproductive to have your blinkers on. So, for example, if I was doing, the other week, I was doing an essay for my master's on discourse analysis, and I was analysing an interview, right? And I realised, I was like, I can't just analyse the words, which is one topic. I need to look at the body language. I need to look at their political views. I need to look at their data analysis. There's so many things that go into every single moment. And just to look at one aspect is willful blindness, because you're ignoring so many other important things.
Can I ask James what you said? You said something earlier about being jack of all physically as opposed to, can you remember?
Cognitive?
Sure. Well, because physical skills, for example, okay, so if we've run marathons, right, Dan? So you have to focus when you're running for a marathon. You have to focus on endurance, right? So you can't be a jack of all trades, because if I get in the gym and start squatting 200 kilos for 2 months, then it's not going to help, because my thighs are going to be so big that they're just rubbing against each other every step I take. So in that case, you can't be a master. But some sports, it helps. MMA is the ultimate jack of all trades sports, right? But I was talking to a jiu-jitsu black belt in Milan yesterday, a student of mine. And he said something interesting when I asked him about this topic, obviously knowing that we were going to discuss this today. And he said, yeah, but you need a base in one of them. Like Sal was saying about the vertical, he said you need a strong base in one, and then you can work on the others. And as we know, most MMA specialists have the ultimate specialism in, say, wrestling, or ultimate specialism in kickboxing, and then they add in the other skills. And he said, if you go in and just try to learn everything at the same time, what you get is somebody who basically walks into a room and says, oh, I want to learn Romance languages. And you say, okay, do you know any French? No. Do you know any Portuguese? No. Do you know any Spanish? No. Do you know any Italian? No. But I want to learn all of the language. I want to learn these Romance languages. Like, well, if you learn one well, then it helps when you're picking up the other skills. If you don't know any, you're lost, basically.
All right. Yeah, and and I think sometimes, on one hand, it depends on what kind of personality you have. So if you are more of a creative person, of course, if you are more inclined to be somebody who's very analytical, if you are introvert versus an extrovert, if you are more conservative versus liberal, and these are not things that you just wake up one morning and decide that you are like this or like that. It's things that are deeply connected to your biology and the way your brain just works. Like we all have different brains and similar, but we all have different personalities, and we are unique. And so it depends on what kind of personality you have. And but sometimes,
hang on, Sal. Yeah. So I don't know what you mean. So if you're an introvert, you're more likely to be a specialist or a jack of all trades, for example.
Well, it doesn't mean that if you're an introvert, you're automatically more this or that. You can be an introvert and you can be an analytical person, or you can be an introvert, but you can be a creative. I think, and you can have also portions of both, or percentage-wise, it might be 80-20 with some people and 60-40 with others. What I'm saying is that there's not one approach for everybody. So, some people might need to extend more horizontally just to keep the curiosity and motivation up, versus other people thrive when they can really focus deeply on one problem. Like, for example, scientists, I think, have to be kind of both. They have to be very open, but I think at the same time, fundamentally, they must go very deep and specialize a lot. And people like Einstein, for example, I think they were super specialized. They had to be, otherwise you could never reach that depth and that excellence in your own field, right? And the other thing I was about to say is sometimes you have to force yourself, though, even if it goes against your nature, to completely try something different, and that can work out or can cause a big accident. For example, I told you before with this, just to give you an example out of my life again, with this digital foundation. But then one day I decided, okay, I want to do something completely different, and I started with music, because that's another big field now. But back then it was something completely novel to me, and so I had to build up a kind of foundation around that, like being a performer on stage and all these things. It had nothing to do with the other foundation I was talking about, until at some point after years, I reached a point where I created a big foundation around this other topic too. And then I had to promote that topic somehow, for example. And then the digital part came in handy again, where I could create my own websites and the social media and all these things. So then it connected, and so somehow now, yeah.
So you sort of built up like this, two things, and then you built the bridge at the top.
Exactly.
Beautiful.
Yeah, so that's kind of bridge building is actually a good idea, or like crossing the different what you want to call it, topics, realms. Yeah.
And then it would be interesting to hear about you, man, because of course the term jack of all trades comes from the building trade. So you're a specialist in plastering. Yeah.
This is what I tend to see a lot. So you do get people who are jack of all trades, and I think it's just because they get bored of doing one thing, which is fine. You hear that a lot, but especially with plastering, people say that isn't that boring? You do it every day. But it's not as boring as it looks, plastering, because you're against the clock, which is what people don't realise. So you are always keeping a conscious eye of, you have to get round it all before it's too late, and then you have to start the whole thing again. So that's that aside, though. People get bored, but I do think it's easier to earn more money fast if you specialize in one thing, because you can get slick at that one thing, you know, every time. You're kind of more ready every day for it. Whereas if you're going through a job and you have to think, there's more thought involved every day, you see, so you can't just set up and get systematic at things, because you have to think everything through. Now, don't get me wrong, I mean, building, I don't know enough really about building, but you need to be, you know, every job is different, so you need a few people there with a mindset of kind of working things out, and you need a jack of all there. But at the same time, for things to go smoothly, yeah, you do want professional guys there. And I don't know, I think I often say this to people, maybe it's just in my head, but I often say to people, look, why don't you kind of specialise? Say you just did wooden flooring, and then you got known as the wooden flooring guy. One, it's easier to sell. You know, people know what you do, that you come to mind. Mm-hmm. And two, yeah, you can get slick at it and work out the little ways to be quicker than everyone else at it, and that way you can earn more money. You know? Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah, it's a very good point, actually, because that's a problem that not only with myself, but that people generally who go horizontal a lot have when they ask you, what do you do? And you have problems actually answering that, because there's so many things that you do, but what makes up your foundation? It's a very good point, actually.
And very hard. It's also harder to quantify the skill of a jack of all. When they're working things out, it's harder to quantify. Right. Whereas me, you charge by the meter. How many meters did you do? You know. So you can quantify that. And so you can, whereas you can be undervalued, I think, as a jack of all trades easily, because sometimes it doesn't look like you've done a lot, but you've pushed the job far forward. Where if everyone was kind of sitting there scratching their head because they're all kind of one-dimensional, they'd hold the job back.
Mm-hmm. Sal, to go back to the question, what do you do? If you have a one-word answer for that, then I'm a bit worried about you. I think
one word.
If somebody says to you, "What do you do?" and
plastering.
Shut up, then.
Yeah, sorry.
No, if they say, "What do you do?" Your next question will say, "What do you want me to do?" And then I can see if I can help you, because I'll look in my briefcase of skills and I'll see what I can do. Right.
But people, unfortunately, think in categories. So it's good if you are capable of promoting yourself
palatable,
in an easy palatable. Exactly.
Well, it depends what you're promoting. Like, I'm a teacher, right? I'm a teacher trainer. I can also do translations and interpretations, and I can also do a headstand. So it depends what you want me to do in a particular moment, you know. So I think it's good to have a range of skills, and like you said very well, Sal, when you're intelligent about it, then you start to see links. And I think Joe Rogan uses a quote from some sort of samurai book, and he says, "Seek the way broadly, and you'll see it in all things."
And your headstands are killer, by the way. I saw it the other day.
Good. Seek the way broadly, and you see it in all things. So you have a general sort of ethos, and then you try to go about your work and your life and your learning with a sort of a direction, but it's a broad road, you know.
But it has practical implications, though, because if you promote yourself and you create a website about your services, what's it going to be? Is it going to be a website with 1,000 subcategories?
No, but what am I selling you? So I'm not going to sell you everything at the same time. It's like when you have a friend, right?
No, exactly.
I'm not
you have to
choose
everything
at the same time. I'm saying, okay, well, we do jiu-jitsu together, or maybe we do 2 or 3 things together. But in this situation, maybe we wouldn't be matched. Like, people are so multi-dimensional. Sorry. Then I don't think you have to have a neat answer. So when people say, "I'm a teacher," it's like, yeah, that's one of your hats, yes. But other times you're not. Other times you're a learner. Probably at the same time you're a teacher and learner. Other times you're a jiu-jitsu practitioner. Other times you're a runner. Other times you're a reader. You don't have to choose one thing, because nobody should be just one thing.
No, I absolutely agree.
You do in the real world, don't you? You have to put yourself forward as one thing, and then the rest is unfolds.
But that's when you're selling. I mean, we're talking about being and selling. When you're selling, you have to be specific. Yeah. I'm selling my lessons. I'm selling. If anyone wants English lessons, I'm selling my lessons, but I'm not selling my reading. Right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. When you advertise, you have to be specific. Yeah.
But that's an advertisement problem, then, let's call it like that, because that's a real world problem then. do you create 20 different websites for all the 20 different things that you know how to do? That's a real dilemma. It's a practical dilemma. And
what do you do, Sal? You sell your music, you sell your content, or do you have the same website for everything?
Well, now I have one personal website where I'm not selling really anything, but I just kind of touch upon the macro topics of what I do. So I call it it's along those lines of entertainment and digital content creation. And that's a very big kind of hat to put on. And it covers a lot of different aspects. But I have a specific website, for example, for the band, for the corporate party band. It's a separate website because that's one thing, very specific, and people there don't want to know about all the other things that I do. It's just as simple as that. But it's a real problem. But yeah, it's definitely interesting.
I'm putting my friendly chatter, my friend and chat hat. I need to take my friend and chat hat off because I need to put my teacher hat on. Because I've got a lesson it's 5 to 9 on Saturday morning. By the way,
also just touched the 20-minute mark.
So I have a lesson in 5 minutes, so I better go and put that hat on. But I think it's really great to learn from many different fields and see that the world in the end is interconnected. Just one last point. I remember somebody at Jiu-Jitsu said once, he was talking about Jiu-Jitsu moves and techniques, and he said it's a fantastic feeling when you do one technique and after many, many, many hundreds of hours of practice, you see the link to another technique. And he said it's like walking around a city and suddenly 2 places that you knew before, you find a route to travel between them. And it's just a beautiful moment in your mind where you see that link for the first time. And I think the more of those links that we can find, the better.
Fantastic last words. Well, to our listeners and viewers, thank you very much for joining us again, the Three-Headed Hydra, here with Josh and James making these fantastic sounds. I'm Sal. See you in the next episode of the Three-Headed Hydra.
Peace guys. Why are we making these podcasts? Because 3 heads are better than 1. We'll combine our experiences and research on engaging topics to learn a bit more each time, enjoy the chat, and improve our own communication skills in the process. Innovation comes from the ability to correlate information between different realms of knowledge, and we all have very different realms of knowledge between the 3 of us.
Why the Hydra, you ask? In archetypal mythology, dragons guard piles of gold. Overcoming fears can bring great rewards. What you most need is often where you least want to look, and we won't shy away from the fire to challenge each other and reach that goal.
What's in it for you, listener? Learn, laugh, and love. Get involved and join us on this adventure.